Agree with that?
Yes, I do. And in fact, I guess it all begins with the traditional Islamic saying, but I want to greet the callers to Assalamu alaikum, which means may peace be on all of you, which I honestly come in peace. I don't want to start any arguments. I don't come here to badmouth anyone, because Islam teaches me to be tolerant towards people who may not be of my faith.
And I also understand that, just because somebody identifies as Muslim doesn't mean that they might think exactly the same thing that somebody else that identifies as Muslim does. There's all different groups.
They're very different groups.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. Let me go straight out here, and I'll get to the generosity part next. The biggest threat to Islam, and I'm going to say it very clearly, is not people outside of the religion. It's only been the Muslims themselves. If anyone who's really given a chance for non-Muslims and atheists, agnostics, or anyone else who doesn't believe in the faith to badmouth the religion, it's us, because we've screwed up so much, and we haven't really been the best examples of our faith. Unfortunately, I'm saying majority that's why the media highlights those things all the time. I mean, they totally skip the part where there's people who are really good, the progressive Muslims. They don't talk about those at all. It's just that people want to make news out of these things.
Well, let me stop you for a minute, and let me just say thank you for saying that. Okay, because we sometimes on the show get on to people in particular religions, not only Islam, but Christianity as well, because a lot of times when people behave badly in a religion, people who behave differently or view it differently or have a more liberal view tend to sort of just separate from that. And they don't own it. They won't take responsibility for it. They won't accept that their religion can be interpreted that way or that it can be used that way. So for someone to say, I recognize that there are people that identify also as Muslim that do things that cause problems for Muslims because they're really making trouble for us when they act the way they do, is actually something we don't hear a lot, and I wish we heard more of from people. I'm willing to admit when somebody who's an atheist does things that I don't agree with or that I think, besmirch the label. I know that the only thing we have in common is we don't believe in a God, but that doesn't mean that, people don't see the label atheist on someone else that's acting badly and then associate that with the group. That's going to happen. And so I think it's important for people to say, yeah, that person is also an atheist and they did some bad things. They didn't do it in the name of atheism, but they're still an atheist, and an atheist can still do bad things. And I think it's important that you're willing to say that, hey, there are people who are decent people who wear the label Muslim, and there are people who are, not so good that wear that label too. And I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you so much for saying that. Now, back to the point of generosity. From what I've read about Prophet Muhammad's own history and Islamic history, that Muslims were always thought to be more generous. In fact, there have been stories that I've heard that, there were times when Prophet Muhammad stayed hungry and made sure that the guests were fed. And I'll tell you a recent example. I'm a huge hookah fan. Let me put it out there.
You're a what
hookah.
Fan?
So, soccer?
Hookah fan.
Is
hookah.
That... Oh, like...
The shisha hookah.
I got nothing.
Is that like the pipe?
The water pipe, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I do know what that is. I guess I just didn't think that's what you meant. But okay. All right, cool.
Exactly. So one of my friends, when I was visiting Orange County recently, so one of my friends is an Arab, and he was like, I went out with them. He's how they are, how most Arabs living in the United States have expensive, fancy cars. And they were like, he took me out, and I was like, the entire time he took care of everything. And I told him, listen, I should have at least pitched in somewhere. And I feel bad I didn't. So he was like, no, you're insulting me. That's not how I've been raised. It's supposed to be very generous to our host. And it's a kind of Islamic culture, and it's also a bit of Arab culture too, because they're extremely generous, and we've been taught to be generous too. Like if you ever visit a Pakistani home, you're going to be fed to death.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to stop the host and say, listen, enough.
Yeah.
You've taken very much good care of us. Now now I think we can't take any more. So it's part of our culture, and it's also what the faith teaches us, that we're supposed to be generous. We're supposed to give. It's also part of one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It says zakat. You're supposed to give a certain percentage of your income every year. And I guess well, I guess if the problem with human beings is always that rules are there. And if there aren't rules, and if it's a lawless society, then everything is going to go haywire. So I guess certain rules in Islam are there to for our own benefit. They're not there to like make us oppress people or anything. I know people who have various, especially when it comes to women and modesty, about the hijab and stuff. I'll be honest with you. Growing up, I was never fond of looking at people. I always looked at people with beards as Maulvis, and these guys are illiterate Muslims, and these guys just talking out of their ass, and nothing. And especially, I was always wondering why women would start taking their job. Why couldn't they just use the Pakistani dupatta, which is it's kind of a cloth that they wear on their head sometimes.
Okay.
I just don't understand why society suddenly changed. Like over the years, I saw Pakistani society becoming liberal to religious and then back to liberal. I guess due to certain politicians who were there. It always amazed me that why are they doing this? Is it a cultural reaction? Or is it that people are thinking that, oh my God, Islam is under threat, so we need to start covering our heads?
Well, I mean, I think Egypt is a really good example, right? So Egypt, when I was younger, Egypt was pretty liberal. And then they got a lot more conservative. And
exactly.
I don't know that much about it. Someone had explained it to me, basically saying that it had to do with their contact with Western versus Arabic culture, so that apparently there was a lot of, I was told there was a lot of interaction with American companies and like contracting with American companies, and that people that were going back and forth and working for these American companies or Western companies were getting a lot more, liberalized, and people were getting a lot more Westernized. And then when that ended and they started contracting more for countries that were more, conservative Islam, it started shifting more conservative Islam. I could have it all wrong, right? Like I could be totally wrong about that. It was just something that somebody from the Middle East told me on a flight. That was their explanation for it. I don't know if that's the explanation or not, but I do know that there was a shift. There was a cultural shift. They still were an Islamic culture, a Muslim culture, but they went from being fairly more Westernized to being a lot more conservative, Islam during my lifetime.
Because Muslims sometimes fail to find a common ground, unfortunately. I mean, Islamically, all women have been commanded to do is dress modestly. That's it. And at the most part, you don't have to necessarily wear a headscarf. You can cover. It's basically just, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, that women don't really necessarily have to cover their head at all times. Just modesty is a requirement, and So obviously, and I personally don't think that's wrong. Would you want your mother and your sister?
Oh, I mean, I personally, while I personally don't really see the point to modesty rules, what I will say is that it would be hypocritical to live in a society where people can't run around naked and call some others. You can certainly say that there are more and less rigid enforcements and structures for it. I definitely agree that that's true. And you're even describing some, right? You're saying, well, there are some people who want to cover this woman entirely, and you think she doesn't even need to wear something on her head, just dress modestly. And I'm saying that I personally don't care if anybody's wearing any clothes.
And I would say with modesty, it's none of my damn business.
But
women can wear whatever they want.
Yeah, people can, but the fact is, I can't even here in the U.S.
From my perspective.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is there's this range of what is allowed. And so I think that's kind of what you've been saying, Saad, is that there's a range, right? That there is all this ground that goes from super, super liberal where you don't have to wear anything to cover everything. And then there's all this stuff in between. And that somewhere in between there, maybe people can meet and have kind of like a dialogue that isn't screaming. Is that right? Yeah.
That's true. I hope. I mean, I really don't like that either because I know I in the past show when Matt insulted a prophet and abused him. I know if I would have shared this recording with anyone else, they'd be like, "Oh my God, you heard it, didn't react." It's like, why would I react to it?
Yes, different people will react to the concept of blasphemy in different ways. Correct.
Exactly, because the thing is, like in his own lifetime, he was insulted and thrown stones and all sorts of stuff at, and he didn't react with much better reaction.
Well,
at least I should be trying to follow his example.
Okay.
As the Muslim.
I think that we could probably talk for hours on this, but I'm going to say that we do have other callers, and I do think that you have made your point. Do you think that we are on the same page with this so far?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of common in Islam and atheism, but unfortunately, there's the one thing that we can't really reach common ground on. And I'm going to say it.
There's a lot we can't reach common ground on. But your call is about the common ground, so that's what we're talking. So, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. If that's okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to some other callers. But I want to thank you for your call.
Thank you. Just one last thing. I wish there was a way to honestly there was a way to prove God scientifically or in some way. Unfortunately, there isn't.
We wish so too.
To believe in it only.
See, more common ground.
Yeah. More common ground.
So I wish there was a way to do it. I mean, there's no way to scientifically prove it, and unfortunately, that's the way it is. No matter what kind of explanations people can come up with.
Well, at least you're acknowledging that. We have some other callers coming up who don't. So
well, thank you so much for your time. And I'm glad at least I was able to move through this conversation without any problems. And thank you so much. And I also wanted to apologize to any listeners last week for any comments I made. They were all, I guess we got into a bit of a crazy argument, but I really wanted to say sorry to Matt even, and I hope he peace. Okay. And I really do come in peace. So I hope we're cool with everything. And thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
How long has this show been?